Welcome to First Take, the podcast where we explore important topics related to faith, culture, and the human experience. In this episode, John is joined by three student pastors, Timothy, Eric, and Justin. They explore insights that parents and grandparents of teens should hear. Discover what your student pastor wants you and your teen to know about faith, challenges, and family's role in their spiritual journey. This episode is your guide for navigating the teen years with grace and purpose. The main message for parents: keep communication open. For teens, you are valued, you have a purpose, and you aren't alone. Embrace authenticity, ask questions, and see faith as a journey that needs your engagement. Join us for a deep dive into the wisdom of student pastors. We've got tips to level up your parenting game, master the art of communication, and tackle the teenage years like a pro. If you like this episode and find it helpful, pass it along to a parent or friend. In the next episode, we will hear from teens and what they wish their parents and student pastors knew. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. This is the First Take Podcast. Let's get it.
Hello and welcome back to the First Take Podcast. This is episode 19. We are so glad that you are joining us. If you would, make sure you like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes. And we have other podcasts too that we do. And so make sure you're getting all the content that we have for you. I want to say welcome to the guys that I'm here with. My name is John Louviere, and I am here with the three best student pastors in the Lake area.
Whoa. Ooh, that's a bold statement.
Is that hard to live up to?
Expectations just got
Yeah. I just raised the bar, boys.
Yeah, you did. Is it because we're the three best in this room?
You are here in front of me, and Timothy just told you that I do like to tell fibs. Yes. But no, I want to introduce you guys. First, we have the student pastor at First Moss Bluff, Justin LeBlanc, is joining us. Say hello, Justin.
Hello. How are y'all? I'm good, thanks.
We're not looking at cameras. We're looking at each other.
I know,
remember.
but the people. It's for the people.
Hello to the people. We also are joined by Eric Foshi. He is the student pastor at Crossroads Church here in Moss Bluff.
Yeah. Welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. And we're also joined by Timothy Gothrop. He is the student pastor at Houston River, all the way from Sulphur.
Yeah, but hey, I'm closer to my home since y'all invited me to come back over this way.
Timothy does live in Moss Bluff. And so we're so glad that you guys are joining us. I think that, when we think about this episode, the title of this episode is Confessions of a Student Pastor. And so it won't be confessions for me because I'm not a student pastor anymore. That life is behind me. I was a student pastor, but
Do you have any confessions, John?
It's mostly bitterness, but we're getting over it, man. I meet with Roy once a week to talk about it. But Roy is our counseling pastor, if you don't know.
Healthy habits.
Healthy habits, that's it. And but Confessions of a Student Pastor, and kind of the idea is what you guys wished parents and students knew, right? And so this is an important episode. I think it's important for if you're a parent of a teen or you're a grandparent of a teen or a parent or a grandparent of someone who's going to be a teen. I think it's important to kind of hear some of y'all's insights today. And so we're just going to kind of have a conversation and bounce back and forth off of each other. I have some things that I asked you guys about and that'll kind of guide the conversation. But hopefully it's an encouraging conversation and maybe even a challenging conversation for us as parents, because I am a parent of she will be a teenager this year, and Rhett will be in students next year. Reagan is my daughter, and Rhett. And so I'm one of the parents who's listening because I want to know what you guys would like from me to know in this kind of thing. And so I was thinking we could kind of, y'all's is kind of parents and students, right? Talking to both. One of the things you said, Eric, is that you do more family ministry than you do student ministry. And I think all of us would agree with that. Like you're dealing with parents, and you're trying to do that with parents. And so I'm thinking we'll ping pong back and forth between students and parents. But we'll start with parents. And I think the first one that we're going to start with today is definitely the most important. And it's the most important because every single one of you mentioned it when you were kind of saying, hey, I think we should talk about this. And that is the role of parents in the faith and discipleship of their students. And so If you guys would kind of say, let's kind of work around and say what your heart is when it comes to how parents can be involved and be a part of what is going on there. And I'll stop talking. Who wants to go first?
Well, when I first went to Houston River, one of the first things that I tried to do was a parent night, where I just invited parents in on a Wednesday night to experience what their students would be experiencing. And I just had an outline in my head of I want these parents to be able to pray with their children, but also just wanted to ask some questions, kind of gearing and seeing where their parents were at. And so during my message, I asked them, hey, if I were to ask you to turn to your student, would you be able to share the gospel with them? And I just got eyes as big as saucers around the room. And then as I closed and I was asking them to go and pray, I had several parents refuse to pray with their children because they were just either felt put on the spot and they were kind of embarrassed. Yeah. And I get that, and I put some ownership on maybe not giving them maybe some more.
That's kind of who you are, though.
Open, maybe.
Call them out.
But I had some just were very uncomfortable, and that just kind of blew my mind. As we're talking about parents who are supposed to be able to lead out in all areas of a life and train up the next generation. And they're not even willing to pray with their students. That's
maybe not willing,
flags.
but able.
Or able,
yeah. So I think that goes a long way. That's huge, though. I think having parents at that type of thing so they can see that need is important. What about you guys?
Well, I'll say this. One of the things I always try to tell our parents, whether it's just in a conversation, do parent workshops, things of that nature, or just whatever that may be, I want to make sure they know that we're trying to say the same things in the same way. That it's not necessarily our job as pastors and student pastors to do all the work for their kids. That's our job to kind of guide them along the way. And I want to make sure the way they're talking about discipleship, the way they're talking about leadership, the way they're talking about the Bible, unless it's just obviously completely way off base, we're kind of coming alongside them and not trying to contradict or challenge. One of the things I tell this to our students a lot is that if you ever put me between you and your parents, I will always side with your parents.
That's good. Yeah.
Every time I say I will not choose the student over the parent, unless it's something that's just so absurd that I'm having to call the police or something crazy, because I don't want the students thinking they're going to pit me between them and their parents. It's not happening. I'll side with the parents, but I'd really try to come alongside of our parents and resource them, help them to give some better understanding of what this idea of discipleship looks like. How do you pray? You talked about that, Timothy. You talk about how do you pray with your students? How do you have these conversations with your students? And trying to just kind of speak into them as much as I can. Justin, throw it your way.
Yeah, so we're kind of doing the same thing here as far as family ministry goes at First Moss Bluff. Yeah. But really this year, we've talked about the need for, equipping parents more. Yeah. Okay, being able to for parents being able to lead their kids in a family devotional and lead their kids in Bible reading, lead their kids in prayer. And so trying to resource them more. And so we put some things online already through the Facebook and stuff like that. We have parent resources already. But even this year, we're working towards just its own website type thing of nothing but parent resources to help equip parents to really just simply put it like this, disciple their children.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so we want to equip parents to do that. We want parents to feel like, hey, at First Moss Bluff or anywhere, you're equipped to disciple your children.
Yeah. That's good. I think, one of the things I'm hearing from all of y'all is, that they would be, disciple makers in their homes, obviously. Oh, yeah. But sometimes I can feel like, oh, that's too much. I've never been discipled myself, maybe, or I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do that. And I think maybe a lower rung is that they would just begin to model their faith in front of their students, right, in front of their kids. Yeah. And so, when have you seen a parent truly? They might not know everything, they might not be able to do it, but they have modeled their faith in such a way that it has impacted their kids.
But John, let me pause on this real quick. Yeah. On that. I think, and this is going to be a hot take, right?
Oh, hot take. It's first take, but we'll take some hot ones.
We'll take a first and hot. I think the church, over the last few centuries, I don't know where exactly, I don't know exactly how, but I think somewhere the lines got blurred, and Timothy even shared something with us. where even into the 1950s, the church was communicating something that was maybe a little counter-biblical, if you will, and for whatever the reason being, that it was the church's responsibility to disciple everyone in the family.
Yeah, right.
We're in really the church, and I say church as a whole, not just any particular church.
Yeah, right.
So maybe some churches are more guilty than others.
Yeah, sure.
But as a whole, saying, hey, send us your family and we'll take care of the rest.
That's right.
And so I think some lines got blurred there, some communication got crossed, and now there may be a lot of parents in this generation who are hearing this for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, wait, I'm supposed to disciple my kids, my students. I've never heard that before. That didn't happen for me.
Yep.
I mean, that I'll be honest, that didn't happen in my household.
Yeah.
Not like what we're talking about now. So, if you're a parent out there who's like, hey, I'm hearing this for the first time, or like this is a recent thing coming up, it's really not. It's Old Testament biblical, New Testament biblical, but I think it's something that the church maybe has blurred the lines of communication on over the past couple of centuries.
Yeah, I
So-
can see that for sure.
And it's a big challenge we have to overcome. Like, I'm implementing things to try and help push parents. Y'all have implemented things to push parents, but
Yeah.
we got to figure out, like, there has to be an embracing of the role the parent has in the student's life again.
Yeah, the truth is that they have way more of a role than any one of you guys. Because,
Absolutely.
you guys get them for 1 or 2 hours a week, and maybe a little bit more if you go to some sporting events or anything. You try to be a part of their life, but like the parents they're in the trenches.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important. But, getting back to modeling, when have you seen modeling kind of take a student and they say, wow, I've seen my dad or my mom do this and now I'm doing it? When have you seen that work in your own students?
And I have a recent example. I have a great couple that serve with youth as often as they can.
Mm-hmm.
He works in the plants. She works in the hospitals. So that's not just something that I have with. That's Southwest Louisiana. That's like prime. That's what families end up doing. But when they have a week where they're both working on a Sunday, their oldest, who's a junior, gets his whole rest of his family ready and gets them to church and prepares everything for them so that, and they're sitting together
Wow.
in a row. And I just can't think, like, man, he didn't get there if his parents didn't first say, hey, church is a priority.
Yeah.
Our faith is a priority. We want y'all to grow, even if we're not able to be there in that moment.
I love it. That's so good. What about you guys? When have you seen like the modeling that a parent does? I'll tell you an example from my own home. Like one of the things Amber and I have tried to do here lately is model journaling. As we read the Bible and different things like that. And so my kids don't journal every day, but they'll do 1 or 2 or 3 a week and that sort of thing. And so it's really cool to see them. But I used to do it at church, or I used to do it kind of off by myself or anything. What I started trying to do was do it in front of them, where they could. I want them to see Dad opening the Word. I want them to see that like I have a desire to grow in my own faith, and that none of us are ever finished, and that sort of thing. And so I've just started trying to model it in front of, be out in the open sort of thing,
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like Timothy said, I have a couple that serves in our student ministry that I see that they have a student age child and then a son who's much younger, who's going to be a few more years before he's with students, but and they just you see it in their son.
Yeah.
Their schedules aren't quite as you described, Timothy, but they're always at church. It's become a priority. And so we see that beginning to play out in the lives of their son, and their son's kind of in some leadership roles in our student ministry as he's kind of stepping into some things, learning some of that, figuring some of that out for himself. And they've come alongside him really well to help guide him in that.
Yeah.
And have those conversations. And so it's crucial.
Yeah, crucial is a good word, and I think the support at home to reinforce the things that you guys are teaching is just unbelievably important. And obviously, we'll kind of shift gears here and talk a little bit about what you would want something you may want a student to know, but something that would really need to be reinforced at home is like where students find their identity and what they actually believe about themselves. And, what advice would you give to students about how they see themselves, and how much you guys as student pastors value them and how much the Lord values them, and like kind of how do you talk to them about who they are, at their core? Anybody?
I would just say go back, start simply with the gospel and just remind them of that. Remind them that the culture, the world, people in their lives are going to fail them constantly. But the promise of the gospel never fails.
Yeah.
The promise of Jesus never fails. And so we rest in that. And your worth is in Jesus. It rests in him. It doesn't rest in anything else. And I think there's a lot of pressure that goes into, I feel that as a parent of, man, I really hope my kid can get good grades. I really hope they can excel in this. I really hope they can excel in this, these different things. And in that, we can kind of portray a little bit of, hey, your hope can be in this, or your future can be in this, and these things can happen for you. Instead of reinforcing that, it's kind of that age old adage of like, hey, you can just rest in Jesus. Your hope is in Jesus. Your identity is in Jesus, and everything else will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when we think about the gospel is about value. The value that God places on each person. And so a lot of students can think to themselves, if I'm just a 10th grader at, so-and-so school, I don't do any extracurriculars, I'm not good at anything, and so I don't really have value. But the truth is that they have immense value.
Yeah,
that's right.
And they also have purpose. How have you seen, what would you say about a student's purpose as they try to live for Jesus?
Well, God has a unique, beautiful story He's going to play out in your life, and it's going to be very unique to you. And so if you're looking and trying to compare your life to someone else, regardless of, how faithful that person is, like, God has something unique for you. Mm-hmm. And so as you live your life, you're going to discover that through a lot of searching and a lot of trial and error, but because He might be directing you to go somewhere and you don't want to go there at all. But then, I like to remind kids, life is best when you live in accordance to what God has for you to live. There's safety there. Mm-hmm. There's encouragement there. There's peace there. There's joy there. And that doesn't mean like, oh man, God wants me to go ministry alone. No, you can be a minister to the gospel no matter what job you have, what role you have. Yeah. And, just trying to expand that in the student's mind that, oh, I can be an engineer, but I can do everything to the glory of God. I can be a great athlete on the ball field, but I can do it to the glory of God and not unto myself. Because that's a mind shift.
Yeah.
But that really helps reinforce that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add, John, you look at Ephesians 2:10.
Yeah.
And I've taught that passage of scripture, that one verse many times. And what I always come back with to the students says you were created on purpose and with purpose.
I love it.
And I say that to them constantly. You're with purpose and on purpose. But, you think about it, like if I were to hand you a hammer and you had absolutely no clue what a hammer was, you've never seen, if you can fathom not ever seeing a hammer before, and I hand it to you and ask you to fix something, you probably would break something more than fix something. Yeah. And my point in that being, if you don't understand the purpose of a tool, you can only misuse it.
Right.
And I think it's true for ourselves, but it's also true for our students. So we can get to understand, you got to understand that you have a purpose.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of a journey. Timothy talked about the journey we have to be on to find some of that, and there's some great resources when we come to like spiritual gifts assessment, personality assessment. And granted, those are scratching the surface. I think they're important. I think we should do those with our students. But to get them going on that journey, we'll begin to understand that so that you could go through life the way you're meant to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're God's masterpiece, you're God's handiwork, to understand that, we just talked about this actually. The value of the Mona Lisa is about $860 million, if you can fathom that.
Yeah.
But I can go buy a poster of Mona Lisa off of Amazon for like $12, $15, right? and it looks pretty much the same. The value is not in the print. The value is in the artist.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if we can get our students to buy into some of that,
So
That's
good.
right.
that their value is not what they do. I think that's a big one. I think it's probably true of adults too. Your value,
all of us.
your
Yeah.
identity is
Yeah.
not what you do or how you act or what you look like. Your identity is who you are at your core.
Yeah.
And my value has to be found in my creator, not the creation.
Yeah, and I love how y'all keep using the word journey, because this is a journey, and I think identity and being able to recognize where your identity is a journey all of us are on, even adults.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's important for students to probably know that they're not alone in this. If they struggle there, if they wonder about purpose and they wonder about those things, is that they're not alone.
Yeah.
You know, every student I've ever met, every person I've ever met is at some point on that journey of like really finding their identity in Jesus and his purpose for our life. Going back to parents, another thing that I think that all of us, if you've ever been in student ministry, student pastor, would wish that they would do. You know, we have a tendency as older people, old folks. You're getting there though. You're on your way. But
Still in a different category.
I opened the door for that in the fall by bringing in a 10-year-old.
yeah, that's true. You
So
do. Yeah,
I
that
aged
is
myself.
true. You definitely aged yourself there. But I think, you know, one of the things that we do is we have a tendency to write off generations as, man, they're just so much different than we are, or they don't act the way we acted or anything like that. And so I would say that one thing for student pastors, and something that I heard you guys kind of mention a couple times, was, you know, try not to write off a whole generation because they're different. Try to understand them and serve them in that way. And so kind of wishing parents would do a little bit better job of putting themselves in their students' shoes. How would you advise a parent to kind of understand their students better and go down that road that we're sort of talking about here? What would y'all say to them?
I would say, like, this group, like this generation right now, is kind of intimidating because they know so much. And that, as a parent, they know, like, my 7-year-old, I feel like, knows so much more at the age of 7
Yeah.
than I did at the age of 7. And so I think every parent maybe struggles with that. Like, my teenager now knows so much more than I did as a teenager. So how do I communicate with them? How do I talk to them? Because they have the world's information in the palm of their hand.
Right.
They have every answer to everything that they need. They're
And all the advice they could ever want, even the bad advice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Every brand of advice.
Yeah.
And so I think it's intimidating for parents. Because I know I get intimidated. I mean, by first grade math homework right now. So
True story.
That's because you're from Livingston Parish, but we
hey.
won't talk about that.
yeah. So I say all that though. You're like, students still need their parents to talk to them.
Oh, yeah.
Still need their parents to help them.
Absolutely.
And offer that advice, offer that guidance. Even though it can be intimidating because they have all that information.
Well, they have a lot of information, but that doesn't mean they're not dumb.
Yeah.
I always listen, a line in my house that I use with Reagan and Rhett is, all kids are dumb, including you.
It's a wonder you're not in student ministry anymore.
And so your years of
He has
student
some
ministry
unique
were,
negative reinforcement there.
Well, that's just to say, though, like, and honestly, I believe all people are that way. We all have the capacity to make really dumb decisions. And that's what I'm trying to enforce to them, is like, I trust them. I think they're good kids, but like, all of us have the capacity to make really bad choices and really bad decisions. So when I say all kids are dumb, I really mean all humans are, in that we all have that capacity. And so even though they need parents, because even though they have all that information, they need parents to help them talk through situations and make better choices.
It can be intimidating. What I was going to finish this with, it can be intimidating with how much your student knows.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, know that they still need you.
That's right.
No. Because, I mean, Satan will dress up things in any way, different way, shape, or form. But
So
bottom
true.
line, pride, lust, envy, jealousy, gossip, like, it's the same core sins over and over,
Right.
no matter how they're camouflaged and updated to look fresh.
That's right.
And so if you can understand how you were impacted by those same things, then bottom line, regardless of how it looks or how accessible, you can still talk to your child, talk to your student about those same exact things.
Yeah.
They have fear, you've experienced fear.
Yeah.
They have anxiety, you've experienced anxiety. They might have struggled in some area. Hey, maybe you did, or you saw your parents struggle in something, or like a friend. Like, you can share so much of your story, and you have to be willing to be vulnerable to your student and not have a wall there so that you can share.
I love the way you just put that, because I think that's a lot of our natural response as parents, is to put up a wall because we're fearful of what like really openness and honest questions could be from our students. Because, man, if they ask me this, I might not know how to answer it, or it's going to freak me out that they're wondering these things. And so we put up these walls and we don't do it. So how would you guys encourage parents to create safe spaces for their kids to ask questions, even questions about their faith and about their journey, and to be able to open up to them about some of the struggles that they're going through? How would you encourage parents to open up those lines of communication?
Well, first of all, I'll jump off that and say, you don't have to know everything as a parent.
Amen. Thank God.
And
for
there's
that.
absolutely nothing wrong with saying, hey, you know what, son, daughter, whatever, I don't know, but let's find out. I want to go on this journey with you because you're looking for answers, and now I need those answers to parent you well.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with just saying, I don't know the answer to that question, but
Yeah,
I want
that's
to go.
right.
I want to go find it with you. I want to be on that journey with you. I think it's so crucial for parents and for us in student ministry. I'm a parent of teenagers. That was the weirdest thing when I started teaching on Wednesday night, looking down, seeing my children in our student ministry. And so I think we got to figure out how to view their world as close to the way they see it instead of the way we view it. Solomon wrote, "There's nothing new under the sun." We can take Solomon's, like, his worst day of his life when he wrote this, and then clearly says God says, "I'm doing a new thing." But when it comes down to it, there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to sin. And
Which
Timothy,
is what Timothy
yeah,
was saying,
exactly.
yeah.
So it's from the garden.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
all sin really equates down to I'm trying to take God off his throne and place myself upon it.
That's right.
And it unpacks itself differently. But the things they're struggling with are not new. Just the medium is faster. One, it's a lot faster than when we were younger.
Sure.
And it's more accessible. Like, things that we had to go looking for as teenagers are now looking for them.
That's right. That's right.
And coming at them. Parents, you need to know that. You need to hear that. Like, if you're not watching your students' screens and what's going on in their lives, there are things that are patrolling, looking for them and looking to devour them.
And it doesn't matter how good a kid they are.
That's right.
They're coming after all of
It's
them.
coming after
The
them.
algorithm is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we look at John 10:10, and it says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, we're not talking metaphorically here. Like, he wants to take your child's life. He wants to destroy your family. He wants to rip everything that's good in you out and just leave you in rubble and
good.
ruin. And it's not a metaphor.
Yeah.
But there's another part of that verse. Let's not miss it. But Jesus said, I came to give life, and life, what? To the fullest, so to the abundance, And so I think it's important. But we got to get into their worlds. You talk about generational, and don't quote me on all this because I'd done the research a while back, but I think there's currently 8 generations alive on the planet right now, 8 different generations. And of those 8, I think 5, maybe 6 of them are still 5 of them are in the workforce.
Okay.
But that's including like part-time job, teenagers, all the way through people that haven't retired yet.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people with a lot of, the pendulum swings back and forth between generation and
That's right.
generation. Mm-hmm. That's why we have such a hard time understanding the one before us and the one after us, because, well, we're right and they're wrong, right? That's the way people feel.
Yeah.
We got it all figured out. I struggle with obeying my parents, just like my son struggles to obeying me
That's
sometimes.
universal.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I think if we could ever figure out how to get beyond, well, this is what it looked like in my world when I faced blank, fill in that blank for whatever they mean, anxiety or whatever. This is what, but it doesn't look like that to them.
Yeah.
And if you remember, we did that worship night. It's probably been longer than I realized, but we had them fill out these cards and ask them some just anonymous questions, because that's how you get honest answers. Don't put a name on it. And they talked about most students don't feel like their parents can understand what they're going on.
Yeah.
They were very honest about it. But also they said how desperately they wanted to hear from their parents on these things.
That's right.
Like, it seems such a paradox that no, it's not.
Well, even when they act like they don't,
Yeah.
that's
They want it.
defense.
They
That's
desire it.
self-protection, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The truth is they really want it.
And then the last thing I'll say in this regards, and I tell this to parents all the time. I did it. We did our impact. We did our parent workshop at Impact this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I call it, and I tell this to my leadership team. And I tell this to my parents. It's called the art of not flinching. And if we can train ourselves as parents to not flinch when, no matter what comes out of my son's mouth, my daughter's mouth, I have to act like it was supposed to come out of their mouth in that moment. Because the moment I flinch as a parent or as a pastor, done. That's where that wall goes up.
That's right.
They're
Yeah.
no longer talking to me. They're not have any interest in having a conversation with me because I've now dismissed whatever they're feeling, and their feelings are valid whether I agree with them or not.
So true.
And so when they feel stressed out and anxious, and those are hot buttons for me at times, because I'm like, what do you have to be stressed about? But it's real.
To them, it is.
It's very real. And so I can't dismiss that. And so I can't flinch and be like, no, that's not true. I can't do anything other than receive it and say, okay, let's find answers through God's word. Let's walk this journey together. That's the only answer that I can give as a father. That's the right one.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've thought about is you have to parent from a place of vision, not a place of fear. When we parent from a place of fear, we put up walls, we try to avoid things. But if we parent from a place of vision of like who we want our students to be, now I won't flinch because I know this is just temporary.
Yeah.
And like very few things are like forever, right? A lot of feelings and things that we go through in life are temporary, but it's hard to see that when you're right in the middle of it. So parent from a place of vision over fear. Create those safe spaces. I think that's all great advice that you guys are giving. I think it'll be a perfect, segue into what we're going to talk about with students next is how students interact with each other matters a ton, and how they interact with each other in the ministry, whether it be through small group or on Wednesday nights or anything like that. And one of the things that came up was the desire that you guys have for students to just be themselves. To just, authenticity and be who they are, and don't try to do everything you can to fit in. Kind of share some of your thoughts on that and your heart behind just wanting a student to not put pressure on themselves, but to just be themselves. Anybody want to go?
I mean, I'd go just from the standpoint of student ministry. We're trying to create that safe space for you to be yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want you to come in and have to hide or put up a wall or put up a fake persona of who you really are. And I also don't want to ever have, I don't want people to get into the habit of doing that, in our church in general, but especially when they come into student ministry. I want to know exactly what you're struggling with, what you're excelling in, what's going well in your walk with Jesus, and what really are you having problems with? Do you love coming to worship but really struggle reading your Bible? Let's talk about that. Let's be real about that. That's a real thing. And to think, I don't want students to think, never want them to have this misconception that they're the only ones struggling with this,
or having questions, or
having
doubts,
questions
or
or doubts, or it's just students. And there are adults on our campus every single week who struggle with, man, I love coming to worship, but I don't really like reading my Bible.
Yeah.
Or I struggle with community, or I'm struggling to find someone to connect with. No, you're not the only one. And if you let us know that, then the more we can help you.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned reading the Bible. One of our previous episodes is called How to Read the Bible and Not Hate It.
Yeah.
There's a reason we named it that.
Yeah.
It's because, a lot of people struggle there. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely.
You mean it wasn't just to get more clicks?
Well, obviously.
It's all about the likes.
Hey, I want to jump in, and I'm not. Don't let me go on a tangent. I'm giving you permission to stop me here. But you can back me down here. You talk about expectations. You talk about people being themselves. I just want to speak to anybody who's watching or listening or whatever. Get rid of the term PK, please.
Oh yeah.
Please, as a pastor who has children,
who attend church, pastor's kids.
Sorry, get rid of that term PK, because what you're doing when you're putting a label on them that's inaccurate, and then you're setting an expectation on those children that they have to behave a certain way that nobody else is expected to behave, but because they're a pastor's kid. Timothy's always shaking his head because he is one. He's a PK.
Amen.
He
bro.
gets it.
PK
He's
in
feeling
the
me. But we gotta get rid of that term, because it's a label one, and we don't want a label.
Yeah.
Because they can't be themselves under a label.
Yep. Sure.
And I know I'm specifically talking to a minority. I know that.
But it's for all labels.
Yeah. But
the truth is for
correct.
everybody. Yeah.
Correct. But that one particular, it's a dangerous one that's kind of And I've seen it play out in people's lives, and it gets thrown around, and you get to do that because you're a PK, or you have to do this because you're a PK.
And even sometimes it's thrown out in jest.
Yeah.
But the kids are absorbing that more than we even know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've even seen it. Like you've talked about the PK. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
that is my
You got
reality,
it.
right? But
Most
I've
of your
seen,
issues.
Careful.
Careful.
Some are my own from my own reasons.
Well, no, they're all because of you, but
Yeah, that's right. But when you talk about the label, the PK, like I've had it where it's like when you get labeled the funny kid, and it's just like I had a kid at Impact who's always been known as the jokester, and then he gets really open and honest of like all the pain. And he's like, I can't ever tell anyone this because all they want from me is jokes and
Wow.
a smile.
That's deep.
Mm-hmm.
Like labels impact us so much, and it creates a mask,
Yeah.
whether we want it or not.
that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think parents, I'm going to restate this. I know I've labeled my kids unintentionally, completely
So
unintentionally.
true. Yeah.
Whether it be out of my own hurt, my own frustrations, my own stuff that I have not yet dealt with or I'm dealing with. And you just speak things out, and it occurs. But there's also means for us to break those labels and say, okay, that's not true. I'm sorry I said that. We're going to move past that, but it's real easy to throw labels on our own kids. And then it goes back, then we're bringing this all the way full circle back to the identity thing. And it's a wonder they don't know who they are when we're just slapping labels on them like crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm guilty, man.
I
Guilty.
love what Timothy said, though, too, about labels creating masks, because masks are the worst things for community. And so if we can get students to reject labels, that would in turn reject the mask, and they could come in. And one of the best places, it happens in the home, obviously, we talked about that, but one of the best places for them to come and ask questions and feel open is at church, at student ministry, because it's not just you guys. You got how many awesome student leaders do you have? These are spiritual aunts and uncles that our students can lean on, and they can ask these questions to, and they can, get some advice from. And, those people are vetted, and they are, they're there because they're solid, and we can trust them, and the parents can trust them. And so how would you encourage students to reject labels and dive into something that might be scary for a lot of them, that they're just going to open up and tell how they're feeling, because that can be a scary situation.
I think one of the great things is you have to give yourself the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
That requires some digging on yourself to realize who you are, but then you have to be curious about the person sitting across from you. You can't just rely on texting to be the entirety of your relationship with someone else. If you desire to really know someone, to really be able to connect, and for the mask to just come off naturally, just you're like, oh, that's my brother or that's my sister, it requires curiosity and requires that intentionality. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to be real, and you could get rejected in some of that, realistically. But man, it starts with you, and you can set a new tone for your circle of influence.
Yeah. And even how you navigate that rejection is so crucial. Like, we still have to, as adults, have to learn how to navigate rejection. We need to, we can teach our students, our teenagers, you may be rejected in life, because you alluded to it earlier. We're imperfect people. It's just going to happen. Yeah. But they have to be able to learn how to kind of navigate that rejection as well.
John, I think something too. I mean, we just had a whole weekend on it. Being truly free.
Yeah.
It's the gospel. It's Jesus who sets us free from these labels.
Yeah.
And allows us to put our identity in Him. And so, for a student out there who's struggling with a label, who's struggling maybe internally, or has already put a wall up or a mask up or anything like that, I would invite them to just come experience the gospel with some other people in community and see how it's freed them. See how freeing it has been for some of your peers to really just say, you know what, I used to wear this label. I used to put on this mask, but Jesus has freed me from that. And see how that's impacted their life. See how they're walking through that now, or have navigated that. That would be my ultimate encouragement to them, is come and watch some other students who have already done this, who've already walked through that.
Yeah.
I think if you think about it, those peer relationships can go a long way when they're positive. They can go a long way either way, right?
Yes.
But when they're positive and so I think for everyone, but especially students, you have to make good decisions and be intentional about who you're investing in with your community.
Yes.
And who you're listening to and who you're absorbing, some of their energy, or as the kids say, their vibe.
Yeah.
Is that even still
Is it-
the right word?
I think
I don't know,
I think
man.
that was last week, John. That was gone. That's
Okay,
gone.
sorry.
That's gone.
I told
You're out of the game.
Reagan that I was going to spend this whole time trying to throw out words like cap and
There's no cap.
Please don't.
No cap.
I turned 40 this year, so it's well past.
Yeah.
me at this
I'm the old
point.
man in the group, and I
You
recognize
are the old
that.
man.
I'm-
Yeah,
I'm made peace with that.
Eric, how many different words like that have you gone through in student ministry?
I can't count, but I don't say
Phases.
them. I don't say them. I refuse to go there.
Eric's
I
been in
probably-
student ministry for like 87 years.
I
at this
probably
point.
have said things probably more in jest, or maybe when I was younger, probably said things trying to. It's not worth it. It's not worth
Just
it.
gotta
I'm
be.
really-
Well, we're talking about being yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
As student pastors, you got to be who you are.
Yeah.
But and you talked about spiritual aunts and uncles. What students need is they need spiritual mothers and fathers, not spiritual friends. Not from us, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
They need spiritual friends, but not from us. I told students, I'm not your friend.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And they give me that look. I'm like, listen to me. I will be friendly. I'm a 47-year-old man. That's weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
That you
Yeah.
want to be my
Yeah.
friend.
Right.
We're not hanging out together. We're not going to Starbucks to kick it. We're not doing any of that.
Yeah.
But they have to understand that I have that authority figure over their lives, and my job is to shepherd. To walk alongside them, but not to be their buddy. And they need to understand that. And I think Justin kind of said this, and I think he said it on purpose, but kind of unintentional. Like, talk about the community. We talk about students. You got to be intentional. Like, you got to go to church. You got to be there. Like,
Right.
it doesn't happen by accident that you're going to build community. You're not just going to randomly show up and everybody's just comfortable with sharing everything if you haven't spent time together. It takes time. Small groups take time to develop, to build that trust.
That's right.
And
So if you're not there, you're missing out.
and parents, it's okay to push them.
Yes.
Yes.
It's okay to push them out. and
Everybody
say,
needs a push.
Yeah. Hey, I promise this is going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be so uncomfortable that's probably beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's
Go-
dig. Let's.
Here's
to
the
dig
push.
with that for a second, one of the worst mistakes you can do as a parent is punish your kids from going to
Oh,
church.
good gosh,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just had one come back. So yes. Man, I'm not punished anymore.
Find something else to punish them from.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got a phone, take it.
Well, the funny thing about this, and I this is my response to the should I make my kids go to church question. What do you make them do?
Yeah.
Because you sure make them go to school, you make them go to practice, you make them go to work. If they have jobs, you make them take out the trash and do their chores. Why?
We make them do a lot.
Well, because you believe those things to be priorities.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question, where does the priority come in?
Yeah.
Should you make your kids? I'm not going to answer that question for you. You have to decide that. But we sure make our kids do a lot of stuff.
Because we want to build good habits. Well, church
Correct.
is a good habit.
Correct.
And I think we'll kind of stick on the student side because y'all have sort of already gone into it. Life balance is important for students. They're very busy. There's a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be sports, any extracurriculars that they have going on. School in general is busy. They just have a lot, right? And so life balance is important for them to kind of figure out at this age. And busyness can lead to them missing out on what God is doing through the student ministry that they're a part of. And so y'all mentioned like, hey, you got to invest in community. You got to actually be there. You got to actually go to church. How would y'all suggest to a student to balance faith and their daily life so that they don't miss out on what God has? Because student ministry is going to be gone one day. And that's a sad, anybody who's left student ministry can tell you about that sadness. And so it's going to be over one day. How do you keep them from missing out on what God's doing?
Man, I take it as a personal challenge, and I'll share this to them. If the only thing you get from your times here on Sundays or Wednesdays is you're connecting to me and only to this group, then I'm failing as a student pastor.
That's good, man.
Student ministries, the best and most effective student ministries are when the whole church as a whole has embraced it and there's
good.
connective tissue. That student ministry just goes from one thing to the next thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that as a church, you need to prayerfully consider the best approach to get that. And that might require some tweaking and some retooling. But then as a parent, you have to be instilling them like, hey, it's not just about youth group. And as a student, you better be received. It's not just about youth group. I need to be investing in the church.
Yeah.
Youth group wasn't in the Bible.
Yeah. So it's for me, and I tell 7th grade parents when they come in for our first Elevate event for news, like, hey, I'm preparing your student to go to FYA.
Yeah.
Like to be fully engaged and jump out of student ministry and jump in with both feet to FYA, which is First Young Adults here, or a college ministry at wherever they're going to school, whether it's Tech or LSU or somewhere else. Like you're jumping in with both feet, like you're ready to go. And that's what I'm preparing them for, starting in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
So like there's a level of maturity bump. There's a level of, high expectations and demands that student ministry has that KidMin didn't. But all of that is to prepare them for that next journey, like next step in their journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to, you talk about their busy schedules. You talk about everything they got going on. So I'm going to give you kind of two sides to a coin, if I may. I think one, the way I try to approach that is like things in life comes in seasons, such as sports. That's a great example.
Yeah, sure.
Because we all have athletes in our ministry that miss events and, Wednesday nights and Sundays and stuff because they have sporting events going on. And long as that, I think as long as you understand that's a season, and that season has to come to an end, because if it doesn't come to an end, it's not a season, it's a way of life.
Right.
I'm gonna say that first of all, but I try to stay connected to them, kind of like Timothy's talking a little bit about that connection, so when they do make it back to church, they're not like, what the heck's going on? I don't know any of these people. So reach out to them and do that through our small groups, especially. Understand the season and really equipping them to be in their teams, in their schools, in their clubs, in their jobs, whatever it may be, to do ministry that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, right.
And help them that. But the other side of that coin, and specifically for students, to live your faith is going to cost you something. And there may come a point in your life in which you have to make a very tough decision on where you're going.
That's right.
Yeah.
It may be, and it may be God's telling you need to go to church this time and miss this practice or even this game or whatever. And in doing so, there will be consequences for it, and you need to recognize that, and you need to take those consequences as a Christ follower would, and just say, yes, I understand. I missed practice. I don't play or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what you need to do, but if God's calling you that's something. It's going to
better
cost
listen.
You. It's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
Living out your faith is costly. It costs our Savior everything. So what would it be different for us? And so there's two sides of that coin. We need to equip them to go into their lives and keep them connected to our student ministries, to our churches and such, and make sure that when they are around, they're there and they're engaged, not sitting on the outside because they haven't been there in a while. But also students got to understand, to go out there and do that, it's going to be costly, especially in today's world.
Yeah, and I think the point is that active participation matters. Like, we have to be if this is important, and we know our faith journey is, being a part of a community and what's going on is an important part of that process. And so just having that at the front of our minds, understanding that there are seasons, but like we want to make sure that we keep them connected. And as a student, we want them to know that it's up to you a lot of times to make sure that you're connected and make those decisions and that sort of thing. I want us to close by having you guys
Can I say one more thing
go
right
ahead.
there? I've yet to meet a parent that would tell their children no when the child says, hey, I want to go to church.
Right.
Can you drop me off at church? Or can I ride with my friend to church? I've yet to meet a parent that's just like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So student, you can't play that, well, my mom won't bring me. There's means.
Yeah.
I don't have a ride. There's means. And like I said, if you want to be there, get there.
We figure out what we want to figure out.
That's right. That's right.
That's the truth. I want to close by having you guys kind of talk directly to parents and tell them how important we talked about how obviously them partnering with you, but how important their support for the ministry is. And so it's not just you guys, but also your leaders that pour into these students and like their relationship both with you, but also with the leaders who are pouring into their kids. And so how important is that cooperation? So partnership is one thing, but cooperation is another, and that support where like, you said that a while ago that if a student tries to pit you against a parent, you're picking the parent every time. I would like to say if a student tried to pit, or a parent would never pit you guys against a student or anything like that. So how important is that cooperation, that the parent would pick you in those types of situations, just to support the ministry and make sure that there's no negativity between the student and the ministry?
Yeah, I would say like it's probably the biggest thing that would happen is, oh, I felt uncomfortable, or like this isn't fun. Like from the student perspective, this wasn't as fun, or this wasn't. And then so the parent kind of plays into that a little bit, maybe sometimes, and be like, oh, well, maybe next time we don't have to go to that, or next time we'll skip out on that, or instead of asking, hey, what was the purpose, or what was the what was the aim for that, so that they better understand it. I would say this: parents, I invite you, ask questions about what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Come to us and say, hey, I want to be able to explain to my student why you do the things that you do, and if that's a better explanation from you to me, like from me to you, like I would love for that. I get excited whenever parents want to know more.
Yeah, and don't always take the student's word for it, because sometimes
Yeah.
that can get a little twisted.
I always laugh. It makes me laugh. I don't need to bring my Bible to student ministry. And they say, and I'll hear from the parent, they say they never open the Bible in student ministry. I'm like, that could not be more wrong.
Right.
Like, I hate to tell you that.
Every
time we meet,
Bible.
we will open the Bible.
Yeah.
Every time we meet. So parents, don't always take your kid's word for it, but also kind of press into that and come to us.
Yeah.
Like, I think every single one of us love when parents come to us and say, hey, really, what's going on here? I want you to feel like you can come to me and just ask that.
Yeah.
How vital is that type of support?
Oh, it's huge. You don't, I've been really impacted on this lately. It's like, if you're only ministering to the students and not to the parents, you're only ministering to half your ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And, I want to be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like even last night, I had some parents that just had to vent to me.
Yeah.
And they just need to have some safe ears to vent to.
Yeah.
And so I want to be that for them, so that I can point them to Christ, but also keep equipping them to be great parents. Like,
That's
I don't want to be someone that's imposing or saying something opposite of what you're trying to do. I want to be someone that's helping reinforce what you're wanting to model in your home.
Yeah.
And because you got them way more time out of the week than me, as we already stated. And let me just be the period on the statement that you've already said.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Really good.
Yeah.
We've all been there where, as a student pastor, we said something that the parent has said 50 times.
Yeah, right.
And we said it once on a Wednesday night, and they go home and they're like, Justin, he said something really smart, and you as a parent been like, I've said that for 5 years, type thing.
Absolutely.
Because here's the thing for parents need to know: the same thing happens for us every time we go to camp.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
That pastor stood up there and said it one time at camp, and they're like, "Man, that was
Finally
awesome!"
clicked.
All
and
the tears flowing.
Yeah, and we've said that for like continuously 12 months before
right.
camp. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just say this to the parents who are watching. As a parent who's not a student pastor, I think one of the most important things that we can do for you guys is pray for y'all
Absolutely.
and pray for the leaders that are in your ministry, because it's not easy. Student ministry is difficult because so much is happening all at one time. And I realize that because I was in it, but also because I watch it and I see it from a distance. And so Amber and I, we want to make sure that we're praying for y'all and as part of the united student ministries of this area and that sort of thing. And so I just got to say, I'm so thankful for each of you. I'm thankful for your heart. I know you love students. I know each of you love students. I know each of you loves all the parents that you have, even when, sometimes it's difficult, but that doesn't mean the love fades. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that in each of your ministries. And I just want to tell you how thankful I am for each of y'all, and how thankful I am that y'all would come here and do this and have this conversation. I think it's a really important conversation for us to have. Just so you guys know, our future, we have a couple of episodes that are going to kind of come off of this. Our next one is going to be Confessions of a Student, where we actually hear from the students about what they wish their student pastors and parents knew. And then the last one is going to be Confessions of a Parent, what they wish their student pastors and students knew. And so this is going to be sort of a three episode series that we do here on First Take, and I can't wait to see those. But don't forget to like and subscribe. I want to thank you guys again for being here. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on the First Take podcast.